Sorry about the way that last video ended. I've been having trouble all morning trying to get this thing to record much longer than 5 or 6 minutes, then it just freezes. So, but I did want to also address a couple of issues that came up with the last papers and some questions that students have been asking me by sending me email. Be easy to send out to everybody at one time so that it's not me repeating the information 100 different times. Number one, questions about the paper itself. The length of the paper, the page number for the paper, the 6 or 7 page document, that page number does not include the title page or the abstract or the references page. Those are separate entities altogether, so keep that in mind. But it all is arranged in that order that you have in the book. So your first page is going to be the title page. The second page will be the abstract. Your actual paper will be page 3, starting on page 3. That's where you'll have your title and you'll start your paper itself. That will be the 6 to 7 pages of document. Then at the end, you will have your references page. Remember, the references page is like your Works Cited page. It's just in APA, it's called references page. In fact, if you turn to page 207 in your book, there's a couple of things worth noting in there that I wanted to highlight for you. Notice that authors' names are handled differently. You have the author's last name, followed by a comma, and then the initials. And that's true in every case. You do not include authors' first names in any instance here. It's always followed by the year of publication in parentheses. Then notice that titles are handled a little bit differently as well. Titles of articles, you have a capital first letter of the first word. Nothing else is capitalized in the rest of it. But titles of journals or magazines or newspapers are still capitalized the same way and italicized as they normally are. So the journal titles and that sort of thing, that doesn't change from the MLA format, but in APA format, titles of articles that you find in those magazines or journals or newspapers, capitalize the first letter of the article, nothing else after that, don't italicize it, it's just used in that form. Then you'll notice that if you list a volume and an issue number, you do not use the VOL or the NO or any of that stuff that we have in MLA. Instead, you list the volume number first, immediately followed by the issue number. If you see your first example in the book under Anglin, that it says 19 and then the parenthetical 2. And this is where it's a little bit odd, because if I do it like this, so you can see, the 19 for the volume number and the parenthetical 2 are all shoved together. There's no space in between. And the 19, I emphasized it here, the 19 is actually italicized. So you italicize the volume number, then you put the parenthetical with the issue number in it without italics. So it's a little odd. I know it seems a little strange when you're used to putting the VOL and the NO and all of that, but this is the way it's required for the APA format, so make sure you do that. Then it will be followed by a comma and the page numbers, but here in APA, even though you use the P period in the in-text citation, on the references page, you don't do that. You simply list the page number like this, so that you wouldn't, so there's no P period or PP period, anything like that. It's just listed as a string of numbers. The only thing italicized is the volume number. The 2 for the issue number and the page numbers are not italicized. The last thing worth noting is that you don't put access dates, and they handle the URLs a little bit differently. Instead of saying an access date, it says retrieved, and then it says where it's retrieved from. So retrieved from, and then you put the URL. This would include the HTTP for APA format. It does include all of that information. Remember, if you have a super long string of numbers, that you can stop at that last logical term that you see in it, but you would include the URL. And then notice at the very end of the URL, there is no punctuation. So it's a little different. Let me run through that very quickly one more time so you get it. You start with the author's last name, followed by a comma and the initials, period. Then in a parenthetical immediately after that, you have the year. Of course, there's spaces in between each of these things, but then the year of publication followed by a period. Names of articles are capitalized the first letter and nothing else, period. Names of journals, magazines, newspapers, and those sorts of things italicized and capitalized the way you normally would. If there is a volume and an issue number, it's handled like this, as I showed you on the board. Italicize the volume, and then the issue number in parentheticals immediately after, followed by the page numbers without a P or P period. And then, by the way, you do not put paragraph numbers here. If you have a paragraph number, if there's no page number, you just skip it. That paragraph number is only for the in-text citation. And then after that, you have retrieved from and put the URL, etc., and that information. If there is no retrieved from, if you didn't get it from the internet, then if you look down on the page 207 of the sample in your book, under Brown, I think it's the third to the last on the page, you'll see that it just simply lists the university that it came from or the university press. It doesn't say retrieved from because it's an actual physical document that you're looking at. So those distinctions are important to make between the APA and the MLA. The format's the same. Instead of works cited, it'll say references at the top, but the way it's arranged on the page with the tabs and the indents and the spacing, all that is exactly the same as we would do in the MLA format. We will talk about annotated bibliography in another video, so I don't want you to worry about that just now. The only thing you need to remember about the annotated bibliography is that it will include all of the works on your references page, but it will also include any other works that you looked at that were helpful in your research that you didn't actually use in your paper. So you need to keep a log or keep track somehow, somewhere in your research of everything that you're looking at, because all of that information eventually you are going to record. So don't wait until the end and think, oh yeah, I used those 3 other sources and I don't remember where I got that information, and then you have to go back and try to find it. Keep tabs on what you're looking at, jot down the information, even if you don't arrange it in the right order, as long as you have the information down, then when it's time to do your annotated bibliography, you can go back and compile that information and put it in the right form, and you've already got it. But we'll talk about the annotated bibliography a little bit later. That will be separate from the document that you're producing now, and of course it'll be a different grade. One of the things that came up in the last paper is I was grading. Most of you did really well. I was real pleased, especially under the circumstances with the work that I got from students. I know there were a few format issues that students had just converting it from one thing to a document that I could read, but a couple of things to please keep in mind. It has to be a Word document for me to be able to write on it or edit it and send it back to you. I cannot do that in Adobe, so if you do that in something other than Word, I'm going to have to send it back to you and ask you to resend it. So please don't put it in that form. It needs to be in a Word document. Most of you do the Word 2016 document, and that's perfectly fine. I'm able to get into those. If you get your document back and you can't read it for some reason, or you get it back and there's nothing on it and it didn't save correctly, just let me know so that I can send that back to you and go back through it. So far we haven't had too many problems with that sort of thing. Lastly, I'm sorry about that. It keeps freezing for some reason. We're trying to work out that glitch, but I'll do my best to keep those to a minimum. The last thing I wanted to mention, though, on the documentation side of it, a number of students made a couple of basic errors that are pretty significant. Number one, not using sources that are critical or critically reviewed sources, critical or scholarly work. When you're using Spark Notes or eNotes or Shmoop or that kind of thing, it is not college-level research. It's fine to look at that sort of thing, but it is not going to be considered scholarly research. You need to be on NC Live or EBSCOhost or one of those search engines, certainly NC Live that you can get at through the Mitchell website and the library very easily, but you need to be on those sources to find well-documented material. If you have a question about a particular source, shoot me an email and I'll take a look at it. But please don't send me all of your sources and say, Mr. Moss, can you check these? I'm not going to do that. That's not my job. That's your job. It's only if you have one in particular that you're puzzled by. But if it's from a university, if it's from a government website, it's from a well-known or not a university, but an organization that has a good I'm going to get it out. A good organization that has a good reputation about their sources or source material, then you can use those sources without having to check with me first. But if you're puzzled by one or you want to double check, then just let me know and we'll figure that out. The other thing, which really puzzled me, is that I had students who had works cited pages, so they had their 3 or 4 sources on their works cited page, but they had no citations in their paper. This is only a few, but I'm not really sure what's going on there. If you have a works cited page, then you have to have citations in your paper, because that means these are the sources I cited in your paper. So if you're not sure why that was the issue or how you made that mistake, or you're not sure what I'm talking about, then by all means send me an email and I can explain that to you in some detail one-to-one. In APA, it's the same thing. If you have a references page, that means these are the things that I referenced in my paper. So every item on your references page has to have a correlation to something that is actually cited in your paper. It'll just be cited differently, with the last name and the year and the page number. So that's it for now. If you have questions, shoot them to me. So there will be some more information, and check your emails frequently, and hang in there, and I will talk to you again soon.